Hey guys, and welcome back. As you know, we've been running pretty hot and we're still up a total of 30K on the trip. Last video, as you guys saw, I was able to play the 5, 10, 25 and we ran pretty good. But today's episode is gonna be back at the 2, 5. Gonna be grinding the lower stakes today because I like to mix it up. So we're on our way there now and I'll see you guys at the table. We arrive at the Seminole Hard Rock in Hollywood, Florida, and end up finding ourselves on the 2-5 game and buy in for a total of $1,000. For the first hand, I look down at 10 jack offsuit in the small blind. Under the gun limps, and he's been raising the 35 and 15 before, so a limp from him equals weak. The button player limps as well, and I think his range is going to be extremely wide. I think an ISO is going to do the job, and 10 jack offsuit is going to be a pretty strong candidate here. So I bump it up to 30, and we get a call from the under the gun player, and we're going to go heads up. The flop comes out 10, 10, 3 with 2 clubs. So we flop trips, and I end up checking it over to him, expecting him to bet any of his under pairs and maybe some bluffs as well. And he ends up going for a bet of $65, which is basically the full size of the pot. When it's back on me, I think we have 2 options here, raise or call. There's more incentive to call given that he bet such a large size, but since we have basically the nuts here, we're going to be check calling maybe some over pairs, but since we have trips, I think we're going to want to be piling in money. So I raise it up to $175 and he ends up making the call. So now I think his range is either 10x himself and non-believing under pair like maybe pocket 5s to 8s and then some flush draws. But how often is he betting full pot with flush draws on the flop? I'm not sure. The turn comes the ace of clubs, so it brings in the front door flush. And I end up checking on this card, given that I would be checking my ace-x here, I'd be checking my pocket jacks, my pocket queens. So I check it over to him, and he ends up checking back. So I'm not sure how many flushes he really has in range now, but heading on to a river, and it's the 9 of hearts. If we bet, we're trying to get called by an under pair, because those are the main hands that we beat, given the flop action. So I don't really see too much merit in betting, and I actually think I'm gonna lose here quite often. The only hands I think I beat are maybe hands like 10-8, and I was gonna say 10-9, but now that's a full house. So I don't see too much merit in betting. I check. He goes into the tank for around 20 seconds before reaching for chips. He counts out a bet of $200 and then hesitates. I'm not sure what he's thinking, but then ends up checking it back. So I don't really know what to think here. I show my hand, as that's the only thing I can do. And he ends up flipping over 8-9 of clubs for a double check back flush. I guess he was afraid that I was trapping some sort of full house. This next hand is very interesting, and I actually end up doing something that I don't think I've almost ever done before. I have pocket kings in the big blind. Under the gun opens $15. Cutoff recreational raises to $60. So we get a recreational 3-bet to 4x. The action's on me. The under the gun player is that same player from the 8-9 suited hand, and this recreational player is a little bit older and doesn't really seem like he knows what he's doing so far. My assumption on recreational players is they overfold to 4-bets with hands like pocket jacks and pocket queens. So I go for an exploitative call, which I almost never do. I don't think I've ever done. If this guy knew me and knew I was capable of bluffing, I am always 4-betting here, but that's not the case. The under the gun player ends up making the call as well. The flop comes out queen of hearts, jack of hearts, 7 of hearts. So we get a monotone flop, queen high. This is almost the worst board I could ask for. I check, under the gun checks, and the cutoff recreational goes for a c-bet of $80. I have a couple options here. He only started the hand with around 600 in his stack, and I had plans of just check raising the flop and getting the money in if it was like a 10 high or lower flop. But on this specific board, I think call plays better. So I make the call, and under the gun ends up getting out of the way. I'm assuming that he's got a tighter range, which means that he probably has a ton of hands like pocket jacks, pocket queens, pocket aces. So when this flop comes out, it's actually pretty bad for us. And the only reason I continue here is because I have the king of hearts. But again, we could just be basically drawing dead against hands like aces with the ace of hearts or a set. So headed off to a turn, it comes out the 5 of hearts. So we hit our flush. I check it over to him and he decides to check back on this card. So I'm assuming he doesn't have the ace of hearts. The river comes out the queen of spades. And this is a very interesting card because maybe he has a hand like ace queen, and now we lose to obviously pocket queens and pocket jacks, and we still lose to aces with the ace of hearts if he ever checks that back on the turn. So I'm going to go for a small little blocker slash value bet to try to get hero called by hands like aces with no heart, or maybe even ace queen. He looks pretty frustrated. He thinks it over for a bit and then ends up letting go of his hand. Maybe he just had ace king. I just went on around a 10-minute walk after that pocket king's hand as I needed a little break. I come back to the table and I end up straddling in from the cutoff. That's just what you do here. 3 players limp it over to me. I look down at 4-6 offsuit and I check it back, of course. The flop comes out 4-4-4. We hit quads and I look up at the high hand board and I see that it's about to end and a new one is about to reset. So all I have to do is wait another 30 seconds and show this hand down and I'll be on that board, potentially win the high hand jackpot if it holds within the next 30 minutes. So we end up checking it and then it goes to the river. Now the time has passed, so it's time to go for value. It's been checked down to me this whole time. I don't really think these guys have anything, but if they do, I'm gonna put out a bet hoping that they call. I bet $50, but they all fold. I flip over my hand and we're on the board for high hand jackpot. Now all we have to do is hold. And it ends up holding, so we hit the high hand. We get $500, but not really because they withhold 30% due to taxes, and I take home $350. Okay, when I explain this next hand, it's gonna make the table sound ridiculously good, which honestly it was. I have king queen offsuit in the cutoff. Under the gun, whale limps. Fish whale makes it $25. Fish hijack calls. I decide to call here for a couple reasons. There's multiple other whales in this hand, and I think getting them to call with their weaker king x and queen x is just better for us instead of squeezing those hands out. Big blind whale fish calls, and then the under the gun whale calls. So we're headed to a flop with a bunch of whales, and it comes out jack 9 5. The action ends up checking to me. I'm in position here. I have a couple options, check or bet. Bet to you guys probably seems like suicide. Bet to me looks like plus EV, and I'll explain why. They're gonna have a ton of hands in their range. Their fish, their whales, their range is extremely wide. They're gonna have a ton of gut shots, open enders, weaker under pairs, and if they have 2 pair plus, we're gonna hear from them right away. These are also a bunch of players who I've seen lead top pair. So when they all check to me, I think they're pretty capped here, and we do have equity. I decide to go for a bet of $75. This is gonna get worse hands to call. It's gonna get better hands to fold, like for example, pocket sixes. Big blind ends up making the call, and fish, whale calls as well. So we're headed off to a turn now 3 ways. It comes out the jack of spades. It checks to me again, and now I have to ask myself, are these guys capable of hitting the fold button here with 9x or with any sort of their draws, or even pairs like 5-6 or 5-7? The players that I'm specifically up against now, I think the answer is yes. So I end up going for a bet of $125 here. It's on the big blind player, and given that he called on the flop with other players behind, I think he can for sure have some jack X in his range. But I've also seen this guy raise top pair on the flop before. But since we're multi-way, he probably wouldn't do it much this time. So I'm hoping that he folds, but I also think that he has a ton of draws in his range, even hands like 7-8 offsuit. So if you can account for all of those open-enders, gut shots, even hands like king 10, queen 10, 10-8, 10-7, 7-8, 6-7, like there's just so many. I'm a little bit worried when he starts tanking, but then ends up making the fold, and then the other player ends up getting out of the way immediately. So we take this one down. I've got pocket tens in the +1 position. We now have a stack of $1,500. Under the gun whale limps. I raise to $20. The big blind calls and the under the gun calls as well. So we're headed to a flop 3 ways. It comes out the deuce of hearts, 5 of hearts, and the 8 of spades. I go for a C bet of $30. Big blind ends up making the call, and the under the gun player ends up raising us to $100. This is a player type who would raise top pair, combo draws, maybe some 2 pairs, but I don't think he really has any, given that he limped called under the gun. Is he really limp calling deuce 5 suited, 5-8 suited? I'm not sure, and I don't think so. We of course lose to pocket 2s, 5s, and 8s, but I'm not folding yet. I make the call. And surprisingly, big blind comes along as well. So I put big blind on some sort of draw, which also isn't great for us because that eliminates more of the under the gun player's draws. We're headed off to a turn, still 3 ways, and it comes out the 4 of spades. Now we have a double flush draw board. Big blind checks, and the UTG player ends up betting 225. The action's on me. I think we can for sure just fold, given that 6-7 got there, but I would expect big blind to maybe even lead sometimes with that. And the reason I say that is based off of his player type. And I also think that he's not really calling many 6-7 offsuits in the big blind, this specific player. I think the only thing that I'm gonna do here is either jam or fold. The big blind is also somewhat short stacked here. And I've seen these situations go down in the past where top pair ends up just taking it down. So with all this being considered, I actually think that folding and calling and jamming is pretty similar in EV, but I feel like taking the high variance route here, and I end up just ripping it in. The big blind ends up folding his hand, but the under the gun player ends up snap calling. The river comes out, the king of clubs, and the under the gun player shows us deuce 5 suited. So we're getting absolutely wrecked by this hand. I don't know if you guys saw my last video, but same sort of thing happened where I value own myself against deuce 5 suited from a limp call player. These are specific spots that I'm trying to get better at when it's a limp caller in the hand and it's a multi-way pot and I'm the aggressor. It's tough in these sort of spots with an overpair when you get check raised by recreational who could be value owning themselves. But maybe it's just best to let go of our overpairs in these spots and live to see another day. I've been on the 5-10 list all day and now they finally called me. So I walk over there to check out the game and it looks pretty good. So I'm gonna take that shot. We're switching games. The first playable hand, I get ace 5 suited under the gun. I open $60, cut off calls, SB ends up 3-betting us to $250. The action's back on me, and ace 5 suited here is going to be pretty good for a 4-bet, given that it's probably one of our better bluffs. In live games, you don't really need to balance that much, so do I really want to take the 4-bet here? Do I think I have enough fold equity pre-flop? Is this guy 3-betting wide enough to where I can get away with this often enough? And I think he has enough 3-bet bluffs in his range, so my 4-bet can take it down pretty often pre-flop, and if he calls, we have some post-flop playability. So I 4-bet to $600, and he ends up making the call. The flop comes out ace of clubs, king of clubs, 3 of diamonds. He checks it over to me, and on this board, it's gonna smash my 4-betting range. It even hits my king x 4-bets. So if he ever has a hand like queens, jacks, 10s, or even when I have a hand like queens, I don't really want to go massive here. And given that I'm going to have some king x in my range and he could have some ace x, I think my c-bet size is going to want to be a lot smaller. So I go for a bet of $200. He makes the call. The turn comes out the jack of clubs. Given that he called flop here, I actually think we could be behind quite often, and especially on this specific card. But it's good to note he could still have hands like king queen and maybe even hands like jack 10. So when he checks it over to me, and again, this is a board that's just going to smash my 4-betting range, so I think I'm going to want to continue betting with most of my range here, and I go for a bet of $400. He tanks for a little bit and then ends up jamming for $1,700 effective. Part of the equation that I missed here is that he definitely has more flushes in range. He's got around 5 combinations of flushes if he ever 3-bets suited connectors. He's probably never folding those to my 4-bet, so hands like 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, 8, 8, 9, 9, 10 suited. He could also have pocket jacks here since I bet so small on the flop. Maybe he floats me with that. So of course I end up folding, thinking that this guy has absolutely 0 bluffs in his range, given that this board smashes mine and it'd be a suicide bluff by him. Okay, the day's not going too good so far, but we're hoping to switch that around. I've got pocket jacks and under the gun, open to $55, +1 makes the call, button pro makes the call, and the straddle calls as well. The flop comes out, jack of diamonds, 3 of hearts, and the 4 of hearts. We end up all checking to the button player, who's the pro in this hand, and he bets $75. The straddle player makes the call, and the action's back on me. This board has a lot of flush draws, a lot of straight draws, and a lot of sets opportunities. Hands like pocket 3s and pocket 4s. The straddle can even have 3-4 suited, 3 combinations of that. because there's a couple calls before him, and I would assume he would never let that go for an extra $30, completing the action pre-flop. So I think my hand, of course, is loving to trap since it blocks strong value, but I also think that there's more value in just raising this up here, denying equity and potentially getting called by worse hands that we cooler. And I can definitely have bluffs myself. These are easy to find here, straight draws, flush draws. So I raise it up to $300, button, snap folds, and the straddle player ends up making the call. The turn comes out the 5 of hearts, which is absolutely horrible. Of course, he could still have a hand like 5-6, and he checks it over to me. I debate going for a bet here, but all my bluffs get there, and if I'm going to be check raising hands on this flop as well, like pocket aces, pocket queens, pocket kings, then on this 5 of hearts, I'm going to want to do a lot of checking back. So that's what I do here. I check back, top set. The river comes out the 6 of hearts, so it's just a horrible run out. He checks it over to me, and now we have an easy check back. No, we don't. I debate my options. Obviously, it's a 4 to a straight out there. Obviously, it's a 4 to a flush. So any heart makes a flush, any 7 makes a straight, any deuce makes a straight. So betting here would be suicide. But do we want to turn our hand into a bluff? I think the answer is no. We definitely have enough showdown value when he checks it over to us. Now let's do some range analysis. We check raise on this flop, and he calls, which means he probably has a lot of flush draws, a lot of straight draws, and maybe some jack X. So given that's what his range is, and he almost checks immediately to me on this river, I think that he's got some sort of showdown value that doesn't include a heart and doesn't include a straight. I think he has 5 combinations of hands that beat us, ace deuce suited, and 7-8 of hearts. I think the rest of his range includes jack X and 5-6. Given that he has a ton more showdown value that we beat, I'm going to go for a small bet here to try to get paid by those hands. I bet $150. He thinks about it for a bit, ends up making the call, and we're good. Alright, pocket 4s in the small blind. Hijack whale raises $80. I make the call. He's sitting 2,500 effective. I think we can win a big one if we hit a set. We're heads up, headed to a flop, and it comes out ace 4-9. So we hit our set against this whale. I check it over to him, and he checks back. Headed off to a turn, and it comes out the jack of diamonds, bringing in the backdoor flush draw. Something to note here is that I've seen a lot of players recently checking back their weak top pairs on ace-x flops. So I think he can still have some of those in his range. But since he's a whale, I actually think that he's got a lot more stuff, more showdown value that's underneath an ace that he might check back again. And I don't want to have that happen, and I don't want him to fold yet. So I go for a bet of $100, planning to go pretty big on the river. He ends up making the call, so we're headed off to the river, and it comes out the king of hearts. Not the best card because he could have pocket kings, but not the worst card either because he can have a hand like king 10. And we're going to want to go either really big here on this river or check. And I think all the hands that we're going to get called by going big are just going to bet themselves when we check. And then we could check raise and potentially win a bigger pot. So that's what I do. I go for the check, and he ends up betting $325. I debate going for all of it here, but we don't have the nuts, and this is a spot where he could still have a hand that beats us, potentially like pocket aces for a trap or pocket kings. He could potentially even have pocket jacks here. So I don't think we're going to want to go all in, and the max value I debate that we can get here is a sizing of $1,200. So I put the chips into the middle, and he goes into the tank. He's not very happy here. He was already tilted from a previous hand, so I think our odds of getting called here are pretty high. He starts playing with his cards as if he's gonna fold, and it looks like he's trying to get a reaction out of me. I give him nothing, and then he reaches for chips, throws in the money, and we're gonna be good here. He flips over king jack for the river 2 pair. Our buddy Alex gives us another action figure, and this one's called Abanai. Abanai. I said that twice because I don't really know how to say it. And look, he might be good luck because we got pocket kings in the small blind. Cutoff raises to $70, button calls, and this is already developing to be a great situation. I 3-bet to $350, and it's only the cutoff player who makes the call here. The flop comes out king 3-5 with 2 hearts. And on these sort of flops, when you hit top set, of course, your natural instinct is going to be, this is my best trap. And if you ever want to add some checks into your checking range here, then this is going to be one of them. But I simplify on these boards to just range betting. And I'm going to want to add this hand in there as well.
given that I'm range betting my entire range here. So I bet $200 and he makes the call. The turn comes out the ace of clubs. Now I debate checking or betting, but this card just hits me so hard, and he could still have some ace-x of hearts in range that are never folding. So I bet $400 and he ends up raising me to $950. We're sitting a little bit deeper here. I started the hand with 4,300 and he had me slightly covered. So I want to go for all of it here. And it looks like Obanae is good luck. I end up 3-betting on this turn to $2,000. I could definitely have some bluffs here still. And I think he can definitely have a few hands that are just never folding. Pocket threes, pocket fives, ace five suited, ace x of hearts, and maybe even a slow play to ace king if he ever has that pre-flop. The only downside here is that this could be a feeler raise with a hand like ace jack or ace queen that he floats flop with. And maybe he just folds to my 3-bet if I 3-bet here. But I think those hands are always checking back on river if I just call. So the raise, I still like it. The action's on him. He thinks about it for a little bit, but then ends up letting go of his cards. So we're still gonna take down this solid big pot. And now we're gonna wrap up the session. But one player, he wants to do flips before he leaves. The game's about to break, and he gives a lot of action in these games, so we're gonna give him some action back, even though this is not really part of my character, and I don't feel too comfortable doing this. But why not? Let's have some fun. We settle on an amount of $250 each, and there's 5 of us. We end up doing the flip, and we all do one card at a time. I flip over top pair as my first card. None of them can beat that, so we're gonna be good here. We end up winning the flip, and they want to do one more. We end up losing the second one, so we made a total of, I think, $300 on that flip. Between 2-5, 5-10, and the flips, we ended up making a total of $2,000 on the day, which is solid, and that puts us at plus 32,000 for the trip. It's been going good. Hope you guys enjoyed this one, and stay tuned because next week's video is going to be pretty interesting. Some cool hands were played, and I can't wait to share them. Thank you guys for watching, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and leave a comment down below letting me know what you want to see for next time. Peace.